Modupe is an associate professor of management at Columbia Business School. She is also the faculty director of the Bernstein Center for Leadership and Ethics. And she is one of my collaborators and graduate school siblings and favorite humans, and is a brilliant researcher. She's going to be talking about some of her work on stress, which is that's your main area, though we studied diversity and inclusion a little bit together. It's like, that's like on the side. Because you know, Modupe is amazing and can have both a primary and side gig research stream. I'm so excited to have you, Modupe, and really delighted to, I can't wait to hear your presentation. And I'm gonna disappear, but I will see you at the very end, and Angela will be the one asking questions, but I can't wait to watch.
Thank you, and so good to see you, and thanks for the invitation to spend some time with you all today, especially since I've had a good time watching many of these in the past year. So yes, I study stress, and in this talk today, I'm going to focus on stress as it relates to disadvantaged college students. We'll get to what that is in a moment, but we all know that, well, we don't all know that these are my collaborators, but these are my collaborators on this work, Aaliyah Crum, Parker Goyer, and Rebecca Grunberg. What we do all know, though, is that stress is a prominent feature of the college experience, whether it is your grades, midterms, tuition, relationships, all of these factors here can contribute to students in college, in grad school, in other environments, feeling incredibly stressed. And that's often magnified by disadvantage. And what do I mean when I say disadvantage? In this work, when we say disadvantage, I'm talking about low socioeconomics, BIPOC, so that's Black, Indigenous, or people of color, first generation students, underrepresented minorities. There is tons of research showing how that disadvantage can affect experiences in college, whether it's just learning to navigate new norms, how you deal with the mismatch between college and your home environments, or the financial pressures, balancing your work, financial needs, the needs of your family at home, and also social challenges, stereotype threat, stereotypes, feeling like you don't belong. And one key question that we have, and that lots of scholars have had, is what are some of the interventions that are most helpful in mitigating this stress and allowing students who experience disadvantage in some way to have a beneficial college experience? And you heard from David Yeager earlier on, and a couple of others maybe about this, the idea of wise interventions. And there's been tons of research on wise interventions as a way of helping students with disadvantaged backgrounds have a better experience in college. Whether it's a values affirmation, reflecting on kind of your core values, which has been found to improve belonging and performance for ethnic minority middle school students, or social belonging interventions. Just if you're worried about belonging, just reminding you that, oh, those worries decrease over time. Those have had effects on GPA, health. Also, difference education. So Nicole Stevens has done some work on how when you have or let's first generation students know that their socioeconomic background could actually be an advantage for them in some ways, that can result in improved GPAs and closing achievement gaps and other positive benefits. But here's the thing with a lot of this research is that they target mindsets about the sources of stress, which is great. But one question we had is, well, what if you target stress specifically and have people have a different perspective on stress broadly instead of the sources of that stress? So what do I mean by stress? And it's always important to first define the things that you're talking about. I like to think of stress, or one definition is, it's a situation where you have constraints, but there are also opportunities, and the outcomes are important, but they're also uncertain. And my favorite definitions are from Lazarus and Folkman: when the demands of the situation exceed your personal resources to cope. That is when you're stressed. And most of us have been taught that stress is a bad thing. We should avoid it. We should manage it. And that is the dominant perspective, that stress is deteriorating, that when you experience it, it really is bad for your health, performance, and well-being. But that is actually just one side of stress, because we can all think of times where we were incredibly stressed, but it took us to the next level. We outperformed, we felt certain energy. And so that's aligned with a mindset of that stress is enhancing, that experiences, it actually enhances your health, performance, and well-being. So the key thing to take away from stress mindset theory, which was developed by my collaborator, is that stress itself isn't harmful or helpful, but what it is that it's your mindset about stress that can influence how you respond to stress and how you experience it. And Ali and me and others have done a lot of research looking at what stress mindset predicts. And there's been some work showing that among Wall Street bankers, that those with an enhancing mindset had fewer negative health symptoms, better work performance, improved life satisfaction than those with a debilitating mindset. Or even in some of our research, we found in the lab that when you induce an enhancing mindset, people are more creative. They're more attentive towards kind of like happy faces and positive things. Also, there's been work showing that students with an enhancing mindset have a greater desire for feedback. And I generally think of all of this as you're more of an approach orientation. You want to learn more, you want to grow more, you want to try things out. You're oriented towards positivity in a stress is enhancing mindset. You're using that stress for a beneficial outcome. So our key research questions were, one, what are the benefits of stress-focused WISE interventions for disadvantaged students? And also, do two specific interventions, stress mindset versus stress management, differentially affect important outcomes for students? So those were our questions, and here's how we went about testing those questions. Okay, so in this study, we had 140 undergraduates at an elite university. And these were students who were enrolled in a summer enrichment program. And we also had 77 undergrads at the same institution that we used as control participants who weren't enrolled in the summer enrichment program. And the majority were female, but then there were also from negatively stereotyped ethnicities. I will pause for a second to say, I consider this work kind of pilot work, trying to understand these dynamics. And there are some, I would say, some flaws with our study designs, but this is a pilot and you'll understand why. So here's what we did. The summer before freshman year, 140 students received either the stress mindset or the stress management training during the enrichment program. Then during freshman year, about 18 weeks after the first training, they got a little booster, just a reminder. Then during freshman and sophomore exams periods in the spring, they engaged in a daily experience sampling study. And they engaged in this, the students in the enrichment program and our controls. Let me tell you a little bit more about the enrichment program. This is a very progressive elite institution. And this program was actually introduced in the late 60s after the civil rights movement and all that. 7-week summer program where they get workshops throughout the first 2 years of college also, in addition to some workshops during the summer. And it accepts 70 students each year from different backgrounds. And so when I mentioned that we've had 140, there are 2 cohorts in this group. And the goal of this program is to really offer some like educational development seminars, personal development seminars, so that they can smoothly transition to college life. So the intended outcome is to help them master problem solving, help them develop relationships and things like that. So that is an overview of what that program is. And the reason I consider this pilot work is that we had access to this program, but we didn't have access to other things that make the design not ideal. But at the end of the day, the goal was to see what we could do to help these students in their college experience. And the hope is to build off this in future research. So here's the study design. So the summer before freshman year, these students, half were assigned to a stress mindset training, half were assigned to a stress management training. In a perfect world, we would have also been able to get matched controls that were not in the program before they started school to do the same thing, but think about how challenging that is. My name is not Katie Milkman, and I could not find those people, nor did I have the ability to do so. So that is one challenge with this design. Then in freshman and sophomore year, a subset of them participated in this ESM study. And then we also recruited control students at the university who were not enrolled in the enrichment program. And they also participated in the experience sampling. I'm going to pause here for a second so we can all get a sense of this. So students learned about stress mindset or stress management. And then at the end of the academic year, they were in an ESM study right before exams, which was a very stressful period. Unfortunately, we couldn't find controls to do the same thing beforehand, but we did recruit controls later. So that's the big flaw in the study design. And the ends are low, but one of the challenges of studying students from different disadvantaged backgrounds at elite institutions is that there are so few. So in light of these constraints, I'm going to share what we found with some reservations, but again, giving you a sense of why we did it to learn more. And so this could be the foundation of a larger study. Okay, so I said before they started school, half of them got stress mindset or stress management training. And let me walk you through what that is. They had a 90-minute session that were led by trained facilitators where they learned about the nature of stress, whether either stress being debilitating or stress being enhancing, and then had a facilitated discussion on the nature of stress, engaged in experiential exercises to give them a sense of what this looked like, and then they did some introspection and reflection. And here's what the stress mindset intervention looked like. So they were shown a video that captures the idea of stress mindset. And I'll actually show you this quick 2-minute video. Okay, so that was the video. And I saw some questions in the chat that I know the questions go later, but I think it's important to note that the idea behind stress mindset is not to tell employers like, yeah, stress people out, it's okay. The premise is that there are going to be certain situations in our lives that are not controllable. Your parent is sick, you know, they are not doing well, a family member, whatever. You can't avoid that stress. It exists. So how can you remember that sometimes stress can be helpful for you, not using it as a vehicle to make sure you like take on more stressful experiences or whatever. So aligned with that, we gave examples after the video about how stress can positively affect your performance. These are literally the slides that were used. It can make us healthier, and gave examples from research on some of the ways in which that happens. Also, it facilitates learning and growth, gave examples of research on why and how. And then they engaged in experiential exercises that encourage them to acknowledge stress, welcome it, and utilize it. So that was the stress mindset intervention. The stress management intervention was exactly the same. They saw a similar video, but everything that said like it's an enhancing thing was switched. So it said it was debilitating. So if you saw someone taking, you know, a shot in basketball, they missed it in this video, you know, so you get the point there. So they saw that same video. I'll spare you from seeing that video. And then shared examples from research. It affects our performance. Stress can make us sick. Stress inhibits our learning and growth. These were the exact same slides, and you see that they're very parallel. And then the experiential exercises, they were taught to avoid stress, reduce stress, and counteract stress. So after they had this 90-minute workshop, at the end, there was a stress mindset measure that has, again, been developed by Allie and her colleagues. And we wanted to make sure that the manipulation actually worked, which it did, because those who saw the stress mindset video and had that training had a higher stress is enhancing mindset, or thought stress was more enhancing than those in the stress management training. Okay. So that is what I said happened at the start over the summer. Then in their freshman year, they got a quick booster as a reminder. Then we recruited controls. And then during spring exam week, there was the experience sampling study. That was freshman year, and then also spring exam week of sophomore year experience sampling study. And here's what the design was. 1 week before exams, a measure of baseline emotion, stress, mindset, economic status, SATs, all that. Then during exams, they got prompts at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., assessing positive, negative affect and hours slept. And then after the ESM study, 1 week after exams, again, we measured emotion, stress, all of that. And here were our dependent measures for the experience sampling. First, just looked at daily positive affect during final exam week, and then daily negative affect during final exam week. And you'll also see that stress was one of the questions we asked about in the daily negative affect and positive affect. Also asked hours slept, and just calculated that for each participant. So here is what we found in this work. Just reminding you of the design. So we're going to compare participants in the green in ESM, red in ESM, and control participants. But in my results, you'll see those as black, white, and gray. Sorry, paper didn't allow me to make the colors pretty. But the first thing is, how different are the different groups? Understanding that that's a constraint of our work. So I'm going to show you condition means during the ESM period, and also contrasts. So EP versus control, management versus control, mindset versus control, and mindset versus management. And the first thing is they took the stress mindset measure before the exam week. And one question is, how long lasting is this stress is enhancing mindset or management induction that we did before they started school? And here in the red box, we see there still is a significant difference in this measure for mindset versus management, with those with the mindset intervention having a greater stress is enhancing mindset relative to those with in the management condition. And then mindset versus control, there was also a significant difference. We saw no difference in stress mindset between the management people and the control. So, but the point is, this wasn't a long-lasting intervention because they still, we still see these significant differences. What about other measures? Who was in cohort 1? Gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, parent education. As I said, we didn't have specifically perfectly matched controls. So there are differences between our EP program students and our control students. So we controlled for all of these measures in our analyses. And in the future, we would get more matched controls. Returning to our key research questions, what are the benefits? How are the interventions different? How do they differentially affect mood, well-being, exam performance? So here's what we found with positive affect. So we see that the stress mindset training increased overall positive affect during freshman exam period relative to the control condition. We saw no difference in positive affect between stress management and stress mindset, nor did we see a difference between control and stress management, but we are seeing a difference between control and stress mindset. And then what about if we look at it over time, over each exam day? What we see here, with a focus on stress mindset being the black line, that the stress mindset, those in the stress mindset condition had greater increases in positive affect relative to controls during exam week. We see no difference in terms of increases of positive affect between mindset and management, and there's only a marginal difference between control and management. So mindset is having this kind of more sustained positive affect over time. What about negative affect? No difference in negative affect across condition. And although we did find that negative affect did significantly decrease during exam week, which is expected. We've all remembered our exam periods where like you're done with 1, you feel a little bit less negative. You're done with 2, you feel a lot less negative. So that was consistent. And we actually weren't that surprised by our negative affect findings because often we found not much with negative affect, but more with positive affect as a kind of symbol or signal of resilience, to see negative affect stay similar, but positive affect to increase or change. Stress, again, no difference in stress levels across condition during exam week, although we saw significant decreases. So stress mirrored the negative affect results. What about hours slept? Here we see that stress mindset participants slept more than stress management participants, but not more than controls. And only a marginal difference between controls and stress management. So within our the groups where we experience the manipulation, we do see significant differences in sleep. Then what about exam performance? So much of the prior research has shown that yes, it affects GPAs, it affects performance and grades and all that. And here we actually saw no difference in exam performance across condition. So regardless of what condition they were in, similar exam performance. But one thing we wanted to look at was the interaction between the stress they were feeling in exams and the condition they were in predicting exam week performance. Because we do know that there's research showing a negative relationship between stress and performance. The more stressed you are, the worse you perform. But does that depend on what manipulation you got, or if you got none? And here's what we found. So the control condition, they showed the expected negative relationship between stress and performance. Mindset condition, this association was reduced by 75%, and in management condition, that was reduced by 48%. So we're changing this link in some way, even though there wasn't the direct difference by condition in terms of performance. So if we put this all together, this stress training did increase positive affect, spring final exam, both freshman and sophomore years, and both conditions, stress mindset and management, were effective in increasing positive affect on on exam days in the school year. Now, one thing that was really interesting is that our stress mindset effects didn't come at the expense of sleep. So we saw that there were more hours slept with them, and it seems like stress management might have come at the expense of sleep. Maybe they're doing more or staying up later, working harder, doing other things that are making them get less sleep, even though we're not seeing that as much in the stress mindset. Not sure, but that is one hypothesis. And then also stress mindset was stronger in decoupling the negative relationship between stress and exam performance, more so than stress management. And there were a couple of other interesting findings that I want to share with you. One of which was that we also, in our preliminary analyses, separated your mood on a day that you had exams and on days that you might not have had exams, because some people had exams every day, some people did not. And one preliminary finding was that only in the mindset condition was positive affect higher on both exam and non-exam days, which is interesting to us because it might suggest that like having positive affect on a recovery day might be helpful for you. So thinking about what do we do, how do we get in the right mindset in our recovery days might predict how we perform on our performance days. But we're still looking into that a little bit more. So what are some of the implications? First of all, this was a 90-minute intervention, some videos, some exercises. By the way, I do these same interventions with MBA students, with senior executives, with corporations, you name it, as a way of helping people to better understand the dynamics of stress. And I actually give them both. I give them tips for in the mindset and tips that come from the management side too. So brief, cost-effective, something that's easy to do that seems long-lasting. Also, when there's something about this on exam days where kind of this stress training might be particularly helpful that we want to delve deeper into. And one thing to think about is when you have more choice in how you construe and how you handle stress, maybe that's when a mindset intervention might be helpful. So these non-exam days, as I was mentioning. So some future directions, yes. Limitations, a larger sample, randomly assigned controls, obvious things we want to do at a large, huge institution where we'll be able to get the requisite diversity and disadvantage that we want, in addition to a large number of students. And then want to see, are these interventions beneficial for other outcomes like persistence or challenge seeking or long-term GPA? We don't know that and are curious to learn more about that. Also, you know, do these interventions outperform other interventions and maybe over a longer period? What about over 4 years of college? Want to know the longevity and duration of these. And then also, can this type of mindset for handling performance pressure actually help with handling other types of stress like adversity or uncertainty? So these are some of the other directions or future directions of this work. This is more, as I said, kind of like a pilot for us, but is intriguing in terms of what we can learn from this work. So just wanted to thank all of the people who were involved in this. And I guess I will open it up for questions and stop sharing.
Thank you, Modupe. I not only love you, I also have worked with and love, I will say, the majority of your co-authors on this. So I'm going to start with Max's question. Your advisor goes first. Max Bazerman asks, what do we know about how stress affects the quality of decision-making? Can stress be managed to improve the quality of decision-making? Are we more likely to use system 1 under stress?
So that's such a great question, which is aligned with what type of decision-making. So I have always focused on saying that stress it's not a one-size-fits-all type of thing. If there is decision-making that is around kind of like being vigilant and attentive to threats, some of my research has shown that when you experience cortisol increases, which is a measure of stress, then you are more effective in kind of like threat-related decision making. But there are other times when stress can be inhibiting for decision making, like when it's a type of decision making that is not about threat, right? Because you're not kind of looking in a vigilant way. So I do think that system one, if it's that automatic and threat is linked to this automatic, then stress can help it. But otherwise, it might not be beneficial for other types of decision making where you need more deliberate thinking that is not about kind of threat and vigilance. So I try to tease that apart and do lots of different research, looking at the different type of decision making and also differentiating types of stress. Because as you see here, there is enhancing stress and debilitating stress. So I hope that helps answer your question, that depending on if you're focused on threat, then certain types of stress can be helpful for decision making, but not helpful if you're not in a threat related situation.
Thank you so much. We have a question. There is such, first of all, thank you. This is such great research. Is there also a discussion of short-term versus long-term stress to help students distinguish between when it can be helpful versus harmful? For example, the distinctions that Robert Sapolsky draws in Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And for the audience members who are less familiar with the stress literature, if you could give a short, kind of like, this is what this question means when we're talking about Sapolsky. I know you know that well.
So
I think this is about like allostatic load and,
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that you can think of different types of stress. I just said that in the question too. There is chronic stress that will not go away. And that chronic stress creates this allostatic load, a wear and tear on your body. And Sapolsky's work and other research has shown that. What I think is important about stress mindset is that it is saying that regardless of the stress, when the stress is not controllable, like chronic stress, you can still adopt a mindset that influences how you experience that stress. So that's chronic, but there's also acute stress. Anytime you are preparing a presentation and you only have 5 minutes before the presentation and you haven't dealt with it.
Midterms are acute stress too, right? Because they have a beginning and an end. I know you were looking at students.
Yeah, and so there is there's acute. This is more of kind of like an acute stressor, because an exam is an acute stressor, and you can still apply this to an acute stressor to say, okay, I've been under pressure before. It can be enhancing. Let me remind myself of those experiences. So the thing that I think is beneficial about stress mindset training versus some of the other trainings, which are good in their own way, is that often things like saying, remind yourself that if your heart is beating really fast, that is a good thing and that can be helpful and it shows that you're engaged. That's great. That's in the moment. It's not about general stress, and it doesn't really capture the chronic stress piece. And so what we're trying to do is get at more of these existing stressors that you can't change, because that's a lot of our life. Hope that answered that question.
Really helpful. And actually, I had a related question, which is, do you worry that this research finding might be weaponized to excuse, say administrators who, don't really want to deal with diversity, equity, and inclusion issues, or the inequities that disproportionately, the issues that disproportionately, like financial aid issues, like real or like support issues, academic support and otherwise. Do you worry that, that the research could be misinterpreted or used wrongly? In other words, like, oh, let's give stress mindset interventions instead of actually changing some of the structural problems.
Yeah, I hope that we are sophisticated enough, responsible enough scholars to say this is not saying that organizations shouldn't do all they can to support and help reduce the stress that we experience in our daily lives. Because we do know that stress is and can affect us in negative ways. And if it's not affecting performance, it can affect our health and well-being. This allostatic load, this wear and tear is real. So I think the key is to say, look, we need to change some of these situational things and these demands in whatever way possible. We must. It is our responsibility to have healthy and happy workers, but we also need, as individuals, to learn how to adjust and adapt to that stress in a way that doesn't kill us. And my hope is that when people have a mindset that reminds them that stress can be helpful and can be beneficial, because it has been in most of their lives, then this will help. But I also hope it'll help them say when it's I think it's important for us to also know when it's too much for us. That what's stressful for me might not be stressful for you, Angela. And if it's stressful for me, I need to get out of that organization and find one that respects my time, respects my boundaries, and is not piling more on me. So I think both sides
Both
matter.
and.
Yeah.
Not either or, it's all both and, usually. Okay, Sally Sadoff asks, and I think you know Sally, she's a BCFG scientist like you and a professor at UCSD. This is a top liked question actually. Is there a concern, I had this as well, that almost everyone in the stress mindset video is white? And let me add, I think there are more men in it than women, although I may have lost count.
That is, so these videos are like 2014 videos. Hello, this is 2021. You know, we need to up our game. We need to change it. There are some people of color in the videos, not enough. And now that you say that, stereotypical, like the basketball, it's like a black guy, probably, whatever. So
no, yes, I think that guy was white, but anyway.
Even the basketball guy was white. Point is, yes, videos need to be updated to be more representative of the world we are in. So thank you for that reminder, and that reminder for all of us in our course materials, in our videos that we haven't had time to update and research because we haven't had time to do research because we're doing other things like trying to fight systemic racism in our institutions, but appreciate that.
Noted and needed. Okay, this is from Hee-Seung Ko, and I apologize if I didn't get the presentation right. There's a methods question. Would you please explain more about how you measured the participants' level of stress? I think this is as the outcome variable, and I had a similar question, like how did you operationalize that?
Yeah, so we literally asked, how stressed are you? Like it was part of, in the experience sampling, every day they got, you know, how are you feeling on these 10 emotions and whatever, and stress was one of them. So that's how we measured.
I think this is such an excellent question. And I'll just say, having co-authored a little bit with Ali, and then also having taught stress mindset in my class, I think when you watch a whole intervention video about how stress can be enhancing, and then someone says, how stressed are you? You know, you're processing it at two levels, right? Like first, how stressed I am, and then how do I feel about how stressed I am? And in a way, I feel like our instruments are not as precise as we would like them to be when you're talking about the fact that there's two levels at which you can process your stress. But
that is
that's
so true.
For future research.
But they were also decoupled because they saw those videos at the start of freshman year and exams were at the end.
Yeah, I just want to know during exams, not only how stressed they felt, but also how they felt about being stressed, because I think the lesson of the mindset intervention is that it's not a terrible thing to be stressed. Like that's not itself, you know, like your negative affect finding isn't necessarily.
That is so true. And that's generally some of the emotions research is like, how do you feel about us asking you how you feeling about this and how you actually feel, right? Like,
right, yeah. So. And then we probably want to go more meta than the subjects do. But Heather Caruso, who now lecturer at UCLA, and I think you may know Heather from Harvard Business School, asked, I'm wondering how this might be moderated by level of stress. Is the best situation having people lean toward interpreting all levels of stress as enhancing or debilitating, or toward having people recognize that lower levels of stress are potentially more enhancing than they might normally realize, but not giving them too positive a view of high levels of stress, which might slow them in seeking necessary help. And I know you did mention a bit about this. I don't know if you wanted to elaborate.
I think the idea is we need to remember that there are two truths of stress. So no, it's not that all stress is enhancing. Some stress is not enhancing. It's too much. It's too much on you. You know, as much as you might say, I can do this. This is great. It's help. It might not be. So I don't think this is that all stress is good. It's saying that not all stress is that, which is, it's a slight frame. It's a different.
That's really well put.
As a person need to be able to say, wait a minute, this is that bad kind of stress for me. I need to do something different versus this is good. So one of the things I say at the end of any of my teaching on this is like, so don't go out there and run after more stressors because you're like, oh, it's good. No, that's not what we're telling you. We're saying it's not all bad. It's not all bad. And that's what people need to remember, and then be able to gauge for yourself when the demands are exceeding the resources, when you don't have the external support, when you don't have XYZ, and when you need to get it. Because if you do, then you can thrive under the stress when it isn't too.
Have you and or your collaborators then considered maybe a combined intervention that actually has elements of the stress management and the mindset interventions?
It's called the stress optimization. That's what we call it, optimizing stress.
So you've already gone down that, yeah.
I feel like we have a grant and we're going to start doing some work on the stress optimization side of things. Yeah, because that's our hope. We need to understand that it's nuanced. We've been taught one thing, but we've lived a different thing. So how can we make sure that we are incorporating our thorough understanding of stress into our daily repertoires?
Optimization is a great word to thank you on, Modupe. I really am. I'm such a fan, and this was a terrific talk. We love hot off the presses, not even hot off the presses, still being baked in the oven or something. Research, and Katie's back on, so I will let Katie tell us what we have in store.
Yay. Yeah, just adding my thanks. It was such an interesting pilot study, so intriguing, and excited to see where it leads. And maybe some people who are listening will take it exciting places as well as you. Okay, next week, our final seminar with Allison Wood Brooks of Harvard University. She's going to be speaking on the topic of how to talk gooder, the science and serendipity of conversation, which sounds, knowing Allison, it will be very entertaining and interesting. So looking forward to that. Thank you, Modupe. This was wonderful.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
See you very soon.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.